Welcome back, y'all. Welcome back. If y'all been following along, you know I'm making my way through Toni Morrison's catalog, particularly the fiction works. I think I will get to the nonfiction, but for now, just making my way through the fiction. I'm reading them in publication order, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. That's what I'm here to talk about. Yeah. That's what we're here to talk about, y'all. So let's just jump right into it. Okay. So I'm only speaking, when I talk about the Toni Morrison books, I'm only talking about the ones that I've read. And it's only these three. I've only read The Bluest, Sula, and Song of Solomon as of now. I'm reading 3 per month. So yeah, overall, let me go over some themes that I see across all of these books. Again, I'm only speaking for these 3. Toni Morrison's books are dark. Like, they have dark themes. They're heavy hitting. They have stuff that's like repulsive in it, but not just for the sake of being repulsive. That's what I can say. With these books, you're going to get that poetic prose that you know Toni Morrison is going to deliver on. You're getting dynamic characters. Like, the characters jump off the page. Like, these are the type of characters that you think about long after you close the book. Like Pecola in this book, Sula and her friend Nell, but particularly Sula, and then Song of Solomon's Milkman, Hagar, Guitar. Like, yeah, the characters are there. If you're looking for, which I'm not going to say that like modern day literature doesn't prioritize characters, but the way that these characters jump off the page, how dynamic they are, how interesting they are, how nuanced they are, just well written. They all have their own personalities, all have their own like dialect and way of speaking and thinking, and it's very distinct from one another. Because sometimes, you'll read a book and all the characters sound the same because you like, yes, one author. But no, all of these characters are very much distinct, very much written for the voice of their time. Super enjoyed the way that she wrote these characters. But like I said, the books are dark, so beware going into them. But I meant it when I said that they're not dark just for the sake of being dark. Like, it's not like, for this shock factor. It's real life. Like, the stuff that she talks about is hard and uncomfortable to read, but it's not like it's unheard of. Like, it's not like these things don't happen. It's just on a page. And it is hard to read some of that. And I have heard some criticisms, like in The Bluest in particular. I have heard some criticism that they didn't like how Toni Morrison humanized the abusers in this book. But I feel like that was part of the goal, because these aren't just, inhumane. Like, they're inhumane, but people forget that they're human too. So these are people that you pass by every day. These are people that they're everywhere. They're not like you don't come into contact with actual monsters in human form, and that's what that is. So I get how people don't like how they feel like she humanized the bad, evil people in these books, but they are human. As much as we don't want them to be, as much as like inhumane they come across as like abusive, all this stuff, they still human. And that's the crazy part, because I always think, like, how many people do you come into contact with, you work with, see at the grocery store, out and about, and they just look like, you can never imagine the stuff that they doing. Sorry, not trying to get dark, but I'm just saying, it's real life. So let's just jump into the review. Now that I kind of went through my overview, everybody on earth knows that Toni Morrison is a fantastic writer. I would hope so. I'm sure there's people that don't, but not talking to them people. We're going to jump right into it with the first book, Toni Morrison's debut novel, The Bluest Eye. It follows Pecola, a little girl who everybody in this book, child and adult alike, call her the ugliest girl they've ever seen, which is so like when you hear it or read it, just like, but like every single person was like, this is the ugliest girl I've ever seen. They feel so bad for her because she's so ugly, and it's like, dude, okay. So Pecola is a little girl who is dark skinned. She's like, she always here. She got nappy hair. She's not cute. They say that she's the ugliest thing walking. And so she prays to God for blue hair, blue eyes and blonde hair, because she thinks that that's what's going to make her pretty. Like, that's the symbol of being beautiful. And it just goes through like her childhood, adolescence, and everything that comes after that. And you just see, one, how she's treated, two, like the falsities, or like that false sense of confirmation or something. I don't know, just by adhering to whitewashed beauty standards. Even back then when this book was written in the 70s, she thought that would make her beautiful. And it's just like, and then when you're reading about her, again, I'm telling you, these characters, when you're reading about Pecola in this book, like, one, you want to jump into the book because nobody was protecting this little girl. You just really want to go and help her, be that person to like help her, like just go pick her up. She needs help, and everybody turn their back to her, and it's so sad what happens to Pecola throughout her whole life, and you just want to help her. And then two, it's sad because, without giving too much away, it's just a tragic story. It's a tragic story. But again, these books are not tragic and dark just for the sake of giving you like this shock value. It's very much real. Like the delusion that we have with certain whitewashed beauty standards, the delusion that we have with abusers and blaming the abused, the delusion of how little kids and kids in general are not protected and how they treat it, and everything else that goes into raising up the next generation. Like, this book, it points it out, and it puts a lot of stuff into perspective, how monsters aren't deemed as such when they are, things like that, and just how that cycle can continue. Yeah, this was a good read. The Bluest Eye. And for a debut novel, like, girl, Toni Morrison said that when she wrote this book, she was not thinking about publishers. She wasn't thinking about readers. She wrote this book because she wanted to read this book and couldn't find it anywhere. So she wrote it. It took her 5 years to write this. She said it was like a passion project. And you can really see just the genius of it. Like, I understand why we talk about this book. It has such high accolades. Yeah, I would recommend this book to most people. Literally. But again, it does have some trigger warnings, like all of these books. Again, I've only read 3 so far. But what I can say is every single Toni Morrison book I've read, these 3, they all have trigger warnings. They all are dark. But again, it's like they're dark, but they're not like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. She makes the darkest, most unimaginable, most gruesome, most disgusting things. She writes them in a way that's so, it's written so nicely that you're gonna read about it and see this, like, she's painting this picture, and even though you want to turn away, you're gonna keep reading because you want to see what the end goal is. Like, where is she taking us? What is she trying to convey? So you stick around, and then you realize, like, oh, I can see the bigger picture. Wow, that was a really nice way to get us to this point, and see and kind of conceptualize that darkness in people. Yeah, so that's what that's about. That's going to tie us into the second one, which is Sula by Toni Morrison. Hope it's capturing it, y'all. This still tells the story of 2 friends, Sula and Nell. Sula and Nell. So y'all know, again, if you've been around, I love like books that are centered around friendship. I should have had a caveat to that, because after reading this, I realized that I can't just say I like books that centered around friendship, because this was centered around friendship-ish, but not the kind of friendship that I like to read about. It was very much like, Sula was a trip. She was a trip, and a lot of people hate her. I'm in the camp that says Sula was dead wrong in so many ways, but I also am in the camp that can acknowledge, again, how nuanced of a character that Sula is. Like, it's like you know this woman, but you also don't know this woman, because she's gonna keep her distance. But you've heard of this woman, like you picture this woman, and when you say woman, it's not really just one person. I'm talking about like this idea of a woman. So it can be anybody that you want to put this Sula title on, any woman that you want to like throw this character on. You've heard about her, you know about her, you kind of stay away from her. You think she's terrible. And this book was like a Sula hate train. It was like a Sula hate train, okay? To the point where, again, I don't want to get too much away, but it was to the point where it was like, do y'all just hate, like, is Sula like the representation of, what is she representing? And I don't want to give too much away, so I'm not going to tell you what I think totally, because you would have to read the whole thing. But like, what is she representing that warrants that much hate? Sula was a trip. She was a trip. But the stuff in this book, like the hyperbole used to really explore everything related to Sula, who she became, what happened to her, how people treated her, her friendship, especially with Neil. That was her closest friendship, but even their relationship was interesting. And you think, like, when you read books about friendship, it's always, not always, but usually it's kind of picture perfect. If they have an issue, it gets resolved. If they don't have an issue, it's very kind of clear cut and dry, like, yeah, I understand why they don't talk. This book was like, it was so nuanced. You can see it operates in this gray area where it's like, not everything is black and white. There are some things that are black and white for sure. But some things are kind of like, they kind of operate in this, part of that is black and part of that is white. But yeah. And again, it's written so well. It's written so well. Yeah. However, it does not have, does it? No. I ain't read a single Sula book, a single Toni Morrison book that's had a happy ending thus far. Such is life. Moving on to the third book, Song of Solomon. This book caught my attention. All of them caught my attention pretty early on, but this one was interesting to me in a different way than the other ones were. It had a lot of emphasis on flying, like, and not in a way that you think it would mean, but there was that word meant a lot of different things in this book. So this book follows the main character, Milkman, from the time he was a child up until his, like, well into adulthood. So it follows him. You get to see him progress as a man. You get to see him come into understanding that he didn't have before. You get parts of him that you just really don't like, and you get parts of him that you can respect. Again, it's that kind of gray area that she operating in, which is, again, life, where it's like, yeah, I can really respect this part of you, but this part, no. That's Milkman. He is very much, you see him grow and develop. And then he has a best friend. His name is Guitar. Guitar represents a totally different type of character than Milkman does. Guitar represents like this black anger, black revenge, black justice, very much like eye for an eye type character, where Milkman started off a little more naive and he kind of developed into a more understanding. But it also gets to the point where you think, just because, well, I got to the point where I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I can come to a point of understanding something, but that doesn't mean that I support it. It doesn't mean I like stand behind it. I can understand it, but, and I used to not be able to, but now I can. So it kind of separates understanding from supporting it. Like, just because I can see how you got to that point and why, doesn't mean that I'm also like, yeah, let me get on that too. Also, the women in this book were extremely dynamic as well. So you had Hagar, which Hagar was like, she was something. So if you know anything about the Bible, in the Bible, Hagar, or the name Hagar, was Abraham and Sarah's maid. And she got permission from Sarah, which was Abraham's wife, to sleep with Abraham and produce his first son, his first heir. But that was just terrible, and so much stuff happened from it. And then Hagar was pretty much pushed to the side and discarded, sent away, because, you know, now Abraham had his family with Sarah and she had to go. You know what I mean? Hagar in this book was pushed to the side. She was pushed to the side, not necessarily for another woman, but she was discarded of, and that ended tragically as well. Her mom, she was such a dynamic character where you want to be like, it's like so much of the story was, you can understand how people got to the point that they got to, but that doesn't mean you like, you are on board and supporting them behind it. One thing I could say about this book, it was a heavy emphasis on the meaning of a name. So like there's a town and people called Solomon, and without giving too much away, I know I keep saying that, but it's just so much in here that you can give away that would be like, oh. Anyways, there was a lot of emphasis on the meaning of a name, how things have meaning, but over time that name can change, therefore changing the meaning. And you kind of get disconnected and lost from why that was even named that in the first place. And the significance of remembering the history of something, the names that go along with it. And like in a lot of African and African American cultures, how names are like embedded in songs, and different things that you want to keep and preserve over the years are embedded into songs. And so you have this picture that's drawn of a childhood song that has a lot of meaning that then solves other mysteries, and you think like, wow, that's pretty cool. Your last name, it has history and meaning, like so many different things. And I appreciated that woven into this story. I appreciated the different ways that taking flight and learning how to fly was embedded into this story, and how it had different meanings at different times. I appreciated that strong, like, you got to see like this interesting relationship between Milkman and his dad, and what that looks like and how that progressed over time. That was interesting to see, from the time he was like in his mom's belly to when he was, you know, an adult and things like that. So it was interesting. And all these characters stick with you. Milkman, Hagar, Guitar, stick with you. Sula, 100% sticks with you, and Neil. And then Piccola, wow, just wow, sticks with you. Yeah, I don't want to keep y'all too long. I don't know how long this video is, but you know how people be like, after talking an hour, I ain't gonna keep you too long, I ain't want nothing. That's how I feel. But anyways, if you haven't read any Toni Morrison books, y'all, get on it. Be prepared though, be prepared, because it's gonna challenge you in a few ways. One, the subject matter is not always easy. Actually, most times it's hard to read, but there's so many important themes of resiliency, themes of racism in America, and the roots of that, and how that kind of goes along throughout history. Themes of self-worth and self-identity, themes of friendship and relationships and familial bonds, coming into yourself, how you look out for your neighbor versus how you don't. You know what I mean? So many good things in these books, but they can be hard to read. I ain't even gonna lie. So this is just the first 3. I'm reading the next 3 in February, and I'm excited. Here we go, y'all. Hope y'all can see them well. Let me try to get one final shot. Thank y'all for watching the video. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your favorites are. What I can say before I skedaddle, I've talked to a lot of people on Instagram about these books, because I kind of post mini updates on my IG story as I'm reading it. And a lot of people say The Bluest Eye is their favorite. If you read this and other ones, do you agree? Is it your favorite? Because I'm trying to hold my final judgment until the end where I could kind of rank which one was my favorite, which one wasn't. I'm trying to hold it because you never know. You know, over time, the way you look at a book or think about it, it might change. So I'm gonna reserve my final answer. But if you've read multiple Toni Morrison books, let me know, is The Bluest Eye your favorite or another one? Let me know. Okay, y'all, thanks for stopping in. I will be continuing this journey until all of the fiction work of Toni Morrison is completed and uploaded. And then, like I said, I'll probably get into the nonfiction too, but it's just I'm prioritizing the fiction. So, okay, see y'all later.